Triza Kimani, and I'm married to one Mr. Kimani Peter, and I have 3 children, and one who is an angel already in heaven, and that is the reason we are here. Today is my birthday, and I'm thankful to God for this day. I remember for about 4 years ago, back in 2015, in December, year 2015, when I delivered our third born baby, a boy. We were already prepared and eagerly waiting for him to arrive. So I was admitted on my birthday, and that day, on Tuesday, when I delivered, things didn't go as I expected. The baby came but had some complications. So what I remember, after I got out of the theater, the nurse who brought my baby in the recovery room told me not to breastfeed the baby. And that being my third baby, because I had already my first and second, it didn't go well with me. And I think my instincts, somehow, I felt everything was not well. So I stayed there for 1 hour. Then the baby was taken away to nursery. Then I was taken to the ward, and my husband joined me there because he was around at Fatima. So about 10 hours later, the baby still couldn't breastfeed. He was removing saliva-like secretions from the mouth and nostrils. So again, the doctor came when he was going round and told me not to breastfeed the baby. So 10 hours. The nurse who came during the night shift, it was around 1 a.m. I told her that the baby hasn't breastfed. So she told me to allow her to take the baby and go to the doctor and see what was happening. So they took about 30 minutes. Then when she came back, she came alone without the baby, and she told us, she found me crying. I had a feeling that everything was not well, and especially when I heard other kids crying, I thought that was my baby. So she told my husband, who was with me all through, that they needed some money to take the baby to Kenyatta for further checkup. That was the hardest moment of my life. Reason, it was only 10 to 12 hours after I came out of the theater. I was still numb. Somehow I couldn't even walk. So there is no way I could have gone with the baby to Kenyatta. I felt so bad. It was so painful and very devastating. So they went, and I kept on calling my husband on the way, asking whether they have arrived, how the baby was. Then he came back at around 3 a.m. without the baby, only the wrappers that had wrapped the baby. And I cried even more. I felt so desperate, but too bad. There was nothing I could have done. So I stayed the following day. I kept on walking around the hospital so that by the time they discharged me, I would go and be with my baby. So on that day, I was discharged, and I went to Kenyatta to see. Then what I found there was very discouraging. I remember I found the baby removing blood from the nostrils and the mouth, and I asked the doctor who I found there in the NBO or Nikutu. I asked her what was wrong with the baby, and she told me that they were suspecting that he had tracheoesophagus fistula. I had never heard of such a name before, but I asked her again if they were suspecting what they had done already, And she told me that the baby was to go for x-ray the following day. So again I asked her, if they confirm what they are suspecting is true, what were the results? The doctor told me that the results were very bad. And then I asked, what are the chances after the results, in case they found out that that the baby had that tracheoesophagus fistula? She told me the results are bad, and the chances to survive are close to nil. I cried, and I think that is the time I started mourning my baby, because I felt so desperate. I was very desperate, helpless, and there is nothing I can do to change the situation. So I kept on watching. When the baby is in nursery, you go to visit after every 2 hours, the third hour. After every 2 hours, on the third hour, you go to visit. So that's what I kept on doing the time he spent in Kenyatta. Then after I felt like there was nothing I could have done, I started now accepting the situation, and I prayed God. And I remember I kept on reminding God of his promises, and how his promises, as we read in the book, they brings no sorrows. How God's blessings brings no sorrows, no tears. So I held on to God's promises, and all I believed was that it was to be well. So I kept on. After every visit, I could go and change the baby's diaper, and I wiped his the secretions that was already coming out. I could wipe. Then I held his head, and the other hand I held his forehead, and I kept on speaking live. We all know that kids dies. I have had so many cases where kids died, but it never crossed my mind that that could have happened to me. So it got me by surprise, and it was a tough one. But I kept on talking to God, reminding him that he was able to change the situation, to heal the baby, and to make maybe when he go to surgery, he come out alive and everything to be perfect. But the more I believed in God, the more I trusted in God, the condition deteriorated after every moment. Then on the 7th day, after all the tests were done and everything was ready, on the 6th day evening, when I went to visit him by 6, I found him. The blood was too much that was coming out, and it somehow discouraged me. And I remember I called my husband and I told him I have been very strong, but this time I don't know why I feel so weak, because that is exactly what I felt. As much as I believed in God, the condition was somehow opposite of getting better. So that evening I went back to where I was sleeping, and it was a very low moment for me. So I went to visit again by around 9:30. Then the condition was the same. I went around midnight. The baby wasn't even moving, and I could see on the monitor that somehow I was losing him. So I went back again, and I don't know how, but I fell asleep in a very deep sleep. Then in the morning, at 3, I didn't go to visit him, or I didn't go to visit him. So at around 5:30 in the morning, now when he was to go for surgery, the same day he was to turn 7 days old, I was called from the nursery. And always when they call you from the nursery, you know that the worst has happened. So when they called me, I had a moment to talk to God, and I told him, because earlier I was telling God, I will leave this hospital without my baby only when you tell me that umeshindwa. And since I'm a believer, and I know that God cannot be defeated, and nothing is impossible before God or with God. That moment when I was called, and I told God, okay, I know that nothing is impossible with you, and I trusted you. If I leave this hospital without this baby, or if the worst has happened, I know you have a better reason for this, because the condition didn't get you by surprise. Uh, you knew that it was to happen. So I went from that floor to first floor where the nursery was, and there the boy was there, lying, lifeless. But I had a feeling that he was resting in peace, because for the first time I saw him without breathing problems, without the pipes and the monitor. But he was there. It's like they were resuscitating him. Then they called me, and he was still warm. I can't explain the feeling. I can't explain what I felt. It was sad, mixed feelings. I was in denial. I couldn't believe that he was gone. I couldn't believe that I was to lose a baby just like that. So I remember the nurse I found there, and they knew how strong I was, and I had changed the mothers there to praying warriors. They all kept on praying for their babies, and I kept on encouraging them that God is going to visit us. God is doing a great thing. So when I felt that I had lost the baby, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to tell them. So I asked God, okay, if you have taken the boy, where do I even start? How do I convince them again that you are going to do something? How? So I asked the nurse. When I went there, the eyes she gave me confirmed my fears. So I went to where the baby was, was lying on the resuscitating table, and she couldn't talk to me. Now the nurse couldn't talk to me. She asked me. She asked me, Teresa, has your husband called you? And I told the nurse no. Then she asked again, haja kupigia? And I asked her, sister, mtoto wangu amekufa. And then she nodded. So I asked her whether she could give me the body. I hold him, because the time I came out of the theater, I couldn't hold the baby. Then throughout he was in the incubator. I couldn't hold him, so I wanted at least to have a feeling to hold him for the last moment. I held the baby, and I asked her whether she would take some photos, and she agreed. She took some photos. I held the baby on my shoulder. I wrapped him with the wrapper, but in me, I was still in denial. I couldn't believe that he was gone. So when time approached for other mothers to come and view their babies, I didn't want them to find me there, because I didn't have anyone to tell them or to console them, because I was their encourager all through. So then the baby had just passed. I didn't know what to tell them. So I asked the nurse again whether they could give me a place. I go and sit, a place where there are no people, so that I could spend with the baby for the for the last time. So I was taken somewhere just around where they put kids when they die, especially at night, and for the family to come and view. So I was given a seat there, and I went there. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to hear God's voice. I wanted to believe that the baby was completely dead. And I wanted God to confirm that it was to be that way from the word go. So when they left me in that room alone, I kept on blowing my baby's mouth, believing that God is powerful and God could, bring the baby back to life. So I kept on blowing, but the moment I blew, air was coming from, I think, from the nose. So I held my baby again from on my shoulder. I held her in my arms, and I started worshiping, a serious worship. And right now, I cannot tell you what was going through my mind. I cannot even tell what was happening. I cannot even tell you where I got the courage from, but I worshipped. That one I know. And I kept on talking to God and telling God, if you're not bringing my baby back to life, then there is a reason, and a big reason that you want to teach me. And I am trusting you that after here, because the baby, if the baby is dead completely, just take over and take control, because I'm no longer myself. The baby will have died with the best part of me. And after about 1 hour, holding my baby on my shoulder, he became very cold, and very, very cold. And that is the moment I felt like, okay, Jesus, it's over. I believe that the baby wasn't to live, so take over and you take control over my life and show me where to go, where to start, and how to do things. And that was it. So I handed the body to the nurse, and I told them that my husband was coming. And I went out. I didn't cry. I don't know why. I had some strong feeling that God was God was present during that moment. But inside me, I had so many questions that no one could answer. I was in denial, and bitterness took over me. I even kept on blaming myself and blaming everyone around. So my husband came, and my 2 other friends, and then we cleared with the hospital. They asked us whether we were to take the body, but that moment I couldn't even concentrate. Then we agreed with my husband that we would leave. It was better for us and for the family to leave the body there for disposal. I didn't have any more strength to carry the baby or to go and bury my own. I didn't have any strength, and I couldn't even watch my baby's burial. So we agreed, and we left the hospital empty-handed, with nothing to show, only a very painful cesarean wound and bags full of his clothes that I had matched, that I wanted him to wear. But all in all, God is faithful. Yeah. So when we left hospital, I called, actually the morning that the boy passed on, we had some groups. I had another group for my friends who did a baby shower for me, and some other groups. I was in a team, nowadays we have Facebook and WhatsApp teams. I was in another team of mothers who were to deliver in December. So when I lost him that morning, I sent a message, and I told them that my baby has gone to be with the Lord. And I told them not to send any message, not to send any rest in peace or what. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I told them just to pray for me and my family. So we left, and when we got home, we found, okay, some people from church waiting for us, and my sister-in-law and my few friends. When we approached home, I had that, painful feeling that I am going home. I went to hospital expecting to come back carrying a baby. I'm going home without a baby, and I could only, look at the bags and everything. And that is when the reality hit me. So I started crying on the way, and it was again a very hard moment for me. I had imagined how the moment would be, but again, things changed. So I got home. Then the kids, they were expecting their brother to be home. When they saw me, I remember it was around 10 a.m. When they heard the bell on the door, my firstborn opened, and you could see the excitement, like they're home, finally. And there I was with no baby. Where do I even start? How do I even convince them that the baby they have been waiting is normal? That needed divine intervention. But I thank God for every moment. He was always with me, always with us. Yeah, so when I got in the house, my firstborn had rushed into his bedroom to change, to come and receive the baby brother. So immediately I followed him. And I remember he was sitting on his bed with the clothes aside that he wanted to wear. And then I started asking him, do you know there is God? And he said yes. That time I think he was 6 years old, so he could understand. So I asked him, do you know God? Who is God? And then he said, he's a strong guy who lives in heaven. Then I asked him, it's very hard to break such news to kids. You don't know their emotions. So I tried, and I asked God to help me. So I asked him, do you know we all belong to God? Yes. Do you know even our brother Noel belongs to God? Yes. Then I told him, now, listen, you see, your baby brother, God has taken him to be an angel, to be watching over us. And there, right then, he broke down. I broke down as well. But I tried to convince him, and I prayed a lot, and I told God, if you allowed me to go through this path, if you allowed this to happen to me, you are going to handle this, and you are going to make him understand how it happened. So it worked, but it wasn't easy, because when I was discharged from Fatima, they came with my husband, the two of them, and my sister. And they came with very excited. When they found me on my bed, they asked me, where is baby? No, in Fatima. So I told them, now you see, this is a hospital for women who have delivered. There is another special hospital for kids, and that is where we are going to see him. So we left the hospital together. We went to Kenyatta, and they spent like 3 hours at the parking, because in nursery or hospitals, they don't allow kids to the nursery. So when I broke the news to him, he kept on asking, but Mom, why didn't God allow us to see our brother only for one time? when we were in Kenyatta waiting, God could have allowed. Now, this is a kid asking you such a hard question. Where do you even answer? How do you even answer? Where do you even start? I kept on praying and I asked God to make him understand. So that's how it all went through. And it was a beginning of a very painful moment for the family. My daughter was a little younger, so it didn't hit her hard. She kept on asking, Mommy, when are you going to get our brother from the hospital? And I kept on telling her, okay, when your brother is well, we'll go and pick him from the hospital. But now my son was older enough to understand that once you are dead, you are gone forever. But all in all, I thank God for every moment he was with us. So I kept on, people kept on coming and visiting. And I think from that moment, that is the time I got my courage. When you go through a certain, difficulty, then you find someone who have been there. They come and encourage you. It works. And I thank God he sent some people who had gone through such, and it made sense. And some other people kept on telling me to go for counseling. But to me, I didn't find it appropriate because I felt like I don't want to hear something that your friend or your client have gone through. It made sense when someone came direct to me and told me, Teresa, don't worry, it will be well. It happened to me. So when I felt like I was not the first one, I wasn't alone, it made sense, and it isn't my pain. I started praying, and after 1 month, I remember that was in December, the baby passed on date 15th of December. Then in January, my husband had to go back to work. My kids had to go back to school. So I was left alone. Another time, reality hit me hard. I was somehow alone. So I kept on asking, where do I start? Where do I go? I had a business, and I thought, okay, instead of staying in the house where when I go outside, at the balcony, I could see our kids' clothes. And I could ask God, God, you saw it right to take my baby so that I don't wash my kids' clothes. But again, because you see, when you keep on asking God questions and he don't answer, you break down. So I avoided going out again to see the clothes. Then I decided, okay, instead of staying in the house, let me go back to my business. By the first day I went there, the people around had already seen me pregnant. Then I'm back. So when they kept on saying, oh, Teresa, congrats. You can imagine the feeling. And then they could ask, oh, ulifanikiwa. Ulipata msichana ama kijana? I didn't tell even one person that the baby died. I told them, yeah, niko na kijana na ako sawa. Deep inside, it broke my heart. It was a very painful moment for me. But I thank God. After some time, I asked God and I cried to God. So I stopped going to my business again. I couldn't take those questions. So I started praying, and I told God that I wanted to hear his voice, and I wanted to see him. I wanted him personally to come and explain to me why, after trusting him for the baby, things turned the way they turned. So along the way, I found myself going for a retreat in Lavington, a prayer house called Vincentian Prayer House. And I can say God is faithful, and whenever something is happening, good or bad, God is there and is very present. So that is the time I learned to listen and to hear God's voice. Because when I went there to the retreat center, my life changed completely. Through the retreat and the healing and the healing and deliverance, I came to understand how God works. And right now I can say that, God, I know you are there. God, I know you are the one who made this to happen, who made me go through what I went through. And I am who I am today because of the experience. It was a very bad experience, a painful one, but out of it I came a very strong woman. And I know that God used me, and God saw it right to use me, because He knew that one day I would become someone to encourage so many people. Out of my experience, I have been talking to so many women and others who are desperate, who are giving up, and when they hear my story, they turn their face to God and learn to trust in God. And I think that is the purpose of life. And I am happy that God used me that way. And again, you see, after all that, when I came to know about God and how God works, I embraced the experience, and I know out of it, so many women somewhere are smiling, so many souls have turned to God, or rather, I have driven so many souls closer to God. And to cut it short, I know it's a long story, to cut it short, 3 months down the line, and remember that was my third cesarean, God visited my womb again. I trusted God. And I remember I challenged God. And I told Him, you made me go through this experience. Kindly help me to come out of it. And I am ready for that was after I went to Vincentian Prayer House, and I started praying. And I connected deeply in spirit. And I told God, now I know I am healed, and I am ready to carry another baby, as long as you promise not to take another baby from me, not to let me go through this experience again. And God, as faithful as He is, He heard my prayer. And 3 months down the line, I was pregnant again. Imagine, after 3 months after cesarean. And I remember the doctor had told me that I had to wait for 2 years to conceive again. But the God I serve, I prayed and I believed and I trusted in Him. And my 4th pregnancy was the easiest compared to other 3 pregnancies. And I thank God for who He is, for the person He has made out of such an experience. I have a rainbow baby boy who is Noel Licinius Minor Kimani. The baby who left was Noel Austin Minor Kimani. So I didn't change much. I only changed the name Austin, Noel Austin, to Noel Licinius. Licinius meaning end of my sorrows, end of my sadness. And here we are celebrating. And I thank God for today. Is a big day that instead of the last three years, I have been mourning. And you see, as some woman, you hold your family. When I'm mourning, there is no peace in that house. But today I am happy we are here. We came to celebrate as we learn to bury the past, and we embrace what God has given us. I'm happy as I turn a year older.